Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, this
Perfect.
is nice. This is the first time I even knew that I could set up FaceTime through my like external mic and stuff on my computer.
Oh, it sounds fantastic.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Are,
Doing all right.
are you on your laptop?
Yeah.
Can you do one thing? Just click on yourself in the corner and just turn it to landscape, if that's possible. There. Oh,
Booyah.
pyramids and all.
Yeah, pyramids and all. That's like a tapestry. Over there I got a fucking space lion and a giant eagle.
Yeah, I
I don't know
love
if you
the
can see that
pyramids.
shit.
Like I always thought Egyptology and like the pyramids and just is so epic.
Endlessly fascinating.
Yeah, there you go.
Because they keep finding uh new chambers and all that kind of shit too. So it's
Right.
like they're just finding out more and more. And then there's also there is that questionable, like, there's the alternative history stuff about like the water damage on the Sphinx, which makes you like, well, these were allegedly built when it was a desert. So you have to go back thousands and thousands and thousands of years for the Sphinx to be able to have water damage on it if it was there during a great flood.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, why is there water damage on the Sphinx? It's like, what the fuck, man? And that's why people are like, aliens built the pyramids. You know what I mean? Instead of, because that's just some people find it a fun thing to just be like, I think
Yeah.
that hopefully we'll know like definitively one way or the other, the next 100 years maybe, but about like the specific details about maybe
Right.
how they were built. But yeah, I got to get out there and see I got to get out there. I got to travel and be able to see them before.
I feel like I missed the boat in a way. Like it's already so unstable over there. I'm sure it's fine when you go,
Yeah.
but it seems that's the weird thing about the news. It makes you seem like it's always everything. You can't go anywhere.
Yeah, and that's why I unplugged starting Monday from news to give myself like a week breather.
Yeah.
Because I was so caught up in it for like, maybe a month and a half previously, like trying to figure out what they're going to do with the new stimulus package and when all that and then when that just kept not happening, I was like, you know what? I got to fucking unplug because I'm soaking in all this other shit as I'm coming here to try to get specific information on a couple things.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting all of the garbage.
Totally.
And so I just so starting on Monday, I didn't get on any of the news websites and barely looked at social media.
I used to get the physical paper because I found like it makes you not click on stuff. You're like, here's the news, and then I recycle it, and I'm done. Like, there's no clickbait.
Oh, that's nice.
But then the COVID happened, and I was like, well, I don't want people delivering stuff. So now I'm back to clicking. I'm just clicking away.
Oh shit! Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, you don't want to.
But I try to do it in the morning only. Like in the morning, coffee. All right, what's going on? That's it. But Twitter sucks me back into the news because I'll get something on Twitter and then you'll click on it, and we like to click.
Yeah.
Clicking is important.
I set my bookmark on my laptop. I don't have Twitter on my phone.
That's a good move.
And I mean, obviously, I could access it through the browser if I really needed to.
Right.
But I set the bookmark on my laptop for Twitter to be the homepage so Twitter's homepage on my laptop is my notifications page.
Okay.
So whenever I click on Twitter, it goes to my notifications, not the feed.
Oh.
So I just see is anybody asking me questions or responded to like anything I put up for like, links to podcasts or whatever, or shows or whatever. And then I try not to even get on the feed anymore.
Oh, that's smart.
I feel my physical body change within 15 seconds into a lower like vibration, to a different like energy that I don't enjoy. And it's been that way for years. And I've just never stopped myself from allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
And so
it's hard to know the benefit of Twitter. Like, what is the real benefit now? Because it's not as viral as it used to be. You're more likely to do something career ending than career augmenting,
Yeah. Are we going?
I guess so.
Are we recording?
We're rolling, yeah.
Okay, cool. It is interesting, the arc of, it's funny, like I used to try this bit years ago and I could never really get it to work. Maybe out of laziness. I didn't work it hard enough.
Yeah.
But the premise of the bit is that the internet is it's like a microcosm of human existence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is showing us how human civilization has evolved. I say quote unquote advanced because I don't think we've gone in a forward direction. I think we have gone in a direction from a starting point where we were, let's say in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think we went off into this direction. Everyone's like, oh, got to keep moving forward and forward. I was like, oh, I don't think we're moving forward
Mm-hmm.
with the way, if squirrels were in charge of the earth, would there be climate change? Right? You know what I mean? Like, and so, but we think we're better. We think we're superior than squirrels, even though
Right.
if left to their own devices, who knows? Squirrels can be assholes. That's no doubt about it. They're like
Yeah.
rats with a blow dryer. But
Right.
would squirrels destroy the environment in which they have to live? Would they ruin their home, right? To make it
Right.
uninhabitable for them? So to think that we're better than squirrels or any other animals, to me, that's kind of crazy. But I attribute most of that to reading the book Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, which is a great book.
Okay.
If people haven't read it, I read it in
I'll check it out.
maybe 24 hours. It was
Yeah.
so good.
It's hard to know,
Anyways,
like,
yeah.
if nature fully left to its own devices, like, and we didn't interfere, what would it look like? Would it just be like peace and harmony? Would it be chaos? Would it be like just
Well, I
overgrown
think,
everything when because animals fight and kill each other and like
well,
it's
sure, for territory and
yeah.
resources, just like we do. But I think the answer to that is our overgrown is what nature considers to be natural.
That's
We
true.
only consider it overgrown because it's getting in the way of our concrete things,
Yeah.
and we don't like weeds for some reason because we can't, eat them and use them for our own good. But it's funny if you ever go to and if your listeners are ever in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, I can't recommend this highly enough. For like I don't want to say novelty of it, but the experience. You go to the Creation Museum
Okay.
and there's a section there where you're in the Garden of Eden and a T-Rex is eating a pineapple in the Garden of Eden. And the signage as you walk through the Garden of Eden, it kind of walks you through what happened for the fall of man.
Okay.
And it's when Adam and Eve fell from grace, when Eve eats the apple, before the fall, there were no weeds. All animals, all living things were vegetarians. So after the fall is when weeds started growing, according to them. I don't know what the science on. Obviously, there is no science because it's the Bible.
Right.
But I also found it very interesting to think that they're trying to perpetuate this image that eating meat is something that happens when the fall of man and original sin becomes a thing.
Right.
Because
like,
I've always, it's weird, right? Because I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Southern Ohio. So it's like you eat meat if you're a man, right? And that's I've always kind of associated that with Christianity. And, just kind of being like, well, on Fridays during Lent, we don't eat meat, but we eat fish. Like fish isn't a living thing.
Yeah. That's in the movie, I mean, this is probably not 100% accurate, but the movie, like with the Ark with Russell Crowe, because they were like vegetarians, which made them superior.
Yeah. And, I'm not, and some people who aren't vegetarians are like, oh, yeah, I know some vegetarians who are like that, who think they're superior because of their diet. And, I don't know. I know I feel better when I'm vegetarian.
Yeah, I feel sporadically better, but I've tried veganism for like a few months at a time. And I don't know. I feel like we don't know enough to like say eliminate. Like I feel better if I just eat mostly vegetables and like a less meat, but like I don't feel the best if I just eat vegetables and like vegan stuff because I end up defaulting to like the vegan meats and it's hard to know the long-term effect of those today.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it seems to be a crapshoot, and I guess at some point we have to, just fully accept that there's going to be some areas in our lives that we are the guinea pigs, right? We are well. Studies show that these people didn't realize blah 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 blah, and we just we get to benefit from those people before us who made the mistakes, and it's maybe our obligation to offer ourselves up as the guinea pigs, the control group for future,
Yeah.
our future ancestors.
For
But
KFC vegan nuggets, which are
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's just so crazy to me, like, think about, what we consider to be like, oh man, look how far we've come. We've got
Yeah.
KFC vegan nuggets.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, but like that's what, that's where we're pooling our
Yeah.
resources.
They're sold out, so you can't get them. But
Yeah, you can't get them anywhere. That is the interesting thing about Los Angeles that I was telling a friend of mine the other day, that because there's a fast food joint called Raising Cane's,
yeah.
and it just opened up in like East LA, out by Mount Baldy, because I was out hiking Mount Baldy a couple weekends ago, and um, there was it was like a fast food hellscape in this area where we were. We just hiked 12 miles and we were starving, so we're like, we have to go get some food right after the hike, and it was like 90 degrees outside. So, and she was like, "Oh my God, there's a Raising Cane's out here now." So I was like,
Yeah.
"Let's go to Raising Cane's." I love that cane sauce, and so the line is so long. The drive-through line at like 4:30 on a Saturday. It is insane. And then right next door is a Chick-fil-A where the line is too long.
Mm-hmm.
And then right across the street from that is an In-N-Out, and the line is crazy long. And I'm just like, see, this is like something that seems to be specific to Los Angeles in my experience. The craziness over fast food.
It's
And yeah.
Southern California is the birthplace of McDonald's and that kind of fast food culture, and we don't like to get out of the car.
Yeah, and it's like, because you never have that experience in Ohio where you're like, oh, let's go get that. No, the line's going to be crazy. Or like we're stopping
Yeah.
traffic.
Yeah. There's too many people here. It's just like it's crazy.
Yeah, there is too many people. There's
But I do wonder,
yeah.
going back to what you're saying about nature, like, so the world's overgrown, right? Of like, if we let the squirrels win, I guess it might be more ecological.
See, that's such a human thing that you just did. I don't know if you even realized it. If you let the squirrels win, is what you said.
Well,
As
it
if,
was funnier.
oh, okay, yeah, it is funnier. Like the squirrels, like to think that we couldn't defeat these tiny little things, right?
So, but if we're part of nature and we're like, okay, well, nature would be better off if we're not a part of it. If we're not digging up fossil fuels, burning them, having cars, industrialization, all that. So then you're like, well, aren't we part of nature? So how do we get to decide that we're not part of nature? We're not part of nature's plan.
That's interesting. I mean, because if left to our own devices, as we have been,
Yeah.
this is what we inevitably did
Yeah.
as a part of nature. Because I do think that's an interesting point, and we are clearly part of nature.
Yeah.
I do live in a world. I've had a paranormal podcast for about 6.5 years, and I'm deeply fascinated with the paranormal world, and I've had pretty intense experiences. So I know a lot of people. I have a lot of experience.
What's it called for the fans?
It's called Me and Paranormal You. I interview people with paranormal experiences or abilities. I mean, to me, the definition of paranormal is anything outside of normal.
Okay.
What the mainstream world, the quote unquote normal world, considers to be like, this is our domain.
Yeah.
So anything outside of that, we're talking about the occult, esoteric knowledge, mystery schools, Freemasonry, ghosts, aliens, alchemy, all that kind of stuff, alternative history, like ancient ruins and all these mysteries, right?
Yeah.
It's like Ancient Aliens, but I don't say what I think. That's the beautiful thing about Ancient Aliens, that TV show. That's why it's been on for 15 years.
Yeah.
Is because there's the voiceover guy who every 3 minutes can be heard saying, some ancient astronaut theorists believe,
right,
and then cut to the talking head saying, this toaster is a portal to an interdimensional world that we've uncovered and uncovered in a grave site in Scotland. And it's like, he can say that because the voiceover guy 30 seconds before that said, some ancient astronaut theorists believe.
Right.
So like none of that information is being presented as being, this is what happened. This is real. This is evidence. This is true. And you hear it so much throughout that show that you even forget that guy's there. You don't even hear it anymore,
A
right? And
toaster would
so
be amazing. Like
wouldn't that be cool?
that's the connection. It makes sense. It's so satisfying pushing that little toaster thing
Yeah,
down.
yeah, and then, like, you've got a piece of buttery bread for your trip through a wormhole,
Right.
uh, if you had butter on board.
Yeah,
But,
because a
like, I
toaster
mean, so
oven never does it. Like a toaster oven, like
no.
it does the job better, but it doesn't have the satisfaction of the
Yeah, you
press.
don't it's like, I need a timer. It doesn't have a toast timer,
Yeah,
you know? And so oh, yeah, so getting back to the original point, if I even remember what it was,
yeah.
the internet, right? When it comes to I think it's like a time capsule of the entirety of human history and what we've done here. Because if you look at the internet when it first started, it was like the wild, wild west, right?
Hmm.
Everybody was like trying to plant their flags in domains and like, this is my land, this is my
Right.
domain, right? And then it's like
Yeah, it's a
endless
land grab.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a land grab.
yeah.
And there's the big boom, right? And
Hmm.
everybody's like, yo, we're going to strike gold out here on the internet, right?
Yeah,
People are just buying up domain names for no reason because they think someday someone's going to pay them $10,000 just to have the domain name, right?
yeah, yeah.
And because people didn't realize because it was so new that no, we would just come up with something other than .com,
Right.
and so now there's a million different dot something else. So
But
it's
.com's like
funny.
the Beverly Hills. Like there's still a value there if you have like
Yeah, oh yeah, it's like
yeah, if
the
you have
original flavor.
puppy.com, that's worth something,
Yeah,
Someone will
yeah.
buy it.
Oh, puppy dot app, no thank
Yeah.
you. Or the dot net was, I think, was the second one, right?
Yeah,
And
.net was
so
like, "Oh, you missed your second
yeah,
wave."
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And uh so you have like this great explosion, this boom,
Yeah.
where everybody's moving out, trying to set up shop because they think they can make it rich. And then that starts happening, right?
Right.
And then slowly but surely, who moves in? The streets become littered with the drug dealers, the pimps, and the sex workers, right?
Mm.
Now, everywhere you go on the streets of the internet, someone's trying to sell you drugs, trying to get you to come jerk off with them for money, all that. Give me a credit card. Give me a credit card. You can have these drugs, or you can, see some boobs. You can see
Yeah.
some. You can see some dick. It's like it's just now. It's like the streets have become
They're back
like
alleys.
littered.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's the back alley. It's like
Yeah.
just there's too much commerce now. It's just exploded too far. Now it's chaos, and you can't even walk down the street without bumping into drug dealers and prostitutes and all this kind of stuff. And then the haters come out, right? And then it's like the streets really descend into chaos because now there's just like gangs walking around
Yeah.
who are like white nationalists or other hate groups. By burning trash cans. The world is ended. The end is near. The end is near. But the end is near very specifically for so many other groups, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like Twitter has become that, right? Like at the beginning, Twitter was
It was
this great
cute.
thing. Like it was cute, it was
Yeah.
fun, it was a way to like, try to get your comedy out there and all this other kind of stuff. But now it's like you can't even get on Twitter without walking down the streets of Twitter and just being assaulted by all these different things, right?
Yeah.
Like technologically assaulted by, hate and like people trying to sell you shit or people trying to steal your information.
Yeah.
And it becomes too much, right? And it's like that's what the internet has become, to me. And, there's still great stuff, obviously. I mean, we're doing this because of the internet
Yeah.
right now. And I do believe in the light and the dark, the yin and the yang and the balance of all things.
I remember
And
the Twitter, like the instructional video, because when it was first coming out, it's like, "What is Twitter?" And it was like this little short clip, and it's like, "Have you ever texted your friend like, 'Hey, I'm gonna go get coffee'?" Well, what you didn't know is there's hundreds of other people who also want to know that. And so
and that's when the downfall
and that's what
started. That's
Twitter
the fall of
is.
man.
You
That's
start telling
the apple.
yeah.
That was the apple in the Garden of Eden because Instagram stories became that
Yeah.
where I'm sorry to say this, but even famous people who are like super engaging or
Yeah.
whatever, no one gives a shit about what you're doing all day long. But like you have, with the advent of the Instagram story, people are like, oh, I need to
Yeah.
broadcast everything I'm doing all day long
Yeah.
because
Which
it's
was
so
taken from
interesting.
Snapchat stories, which was meant to be between friends. And
Yes.
then they're like, let's just give that to everybody. But this is something I struggle with. And we all have online personalities and personas. Like, how much do you share? Like, you see people who are sharing all the time. You see people who are sharing none. Like, is my
And
coffee exciting? Like, I don't know. Maybe.
I think we ebb and flow,
Yeah.
because The mountain might be gorgeous and beautiful, and hiking might be, exquisite to
Mm-hmm.
me, but there's a large segment of the population that's probably like, I don't give a shit about seeing pictures of the
Yeah.
mountainside.
But then you
And I
just
feel
click. You
sad.
just
I feel
like,
sad for those
yeah,
people,
you just keep moving on.
who,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, but it's also like this thing where, we don't have to, and I suffer from this, but it's like, I don't have to take myself so damn seriously. Right.
Yeah.
And like all these opinions I've got, the moment of now is so much more intense than the past or the future. There's valuable lessons we can learn from the past, and there's unlimited motivation and hope
Mm-hmm.
we can take from the future,
There's a
right?
lot
A
of
vision of the
sadness
future.
is like when you're stuck in the present thinking about the past or the future.
Exactly. And the problem with that too is I don't know what this is yet. And scientists have been struggling to even come up with any kind of true understanding of the definition of now.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where Einstein actively avoided it. I just read this book by this quantum physicist, Richard Moeller. He teaches up at Berkeley.
Oh, I'll check it
It's
out.
called Now, the Physics of Time. And someone like me who has no real science background at all, it's a difficult read. I mean, it was an amazing book, but it
Mm-hmm.
took me a long time to read it because I don't know all these quantum physics stuff that he's talking about constantly. But he does a pretty decent job of trying to boil it down for you.
Yeah.
But as I'm reading that book, I finished that book, and then I'm just like, there's something about, and I'm fascinated with now.
Mm-hmm.
I read like The New Earth and The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle,
Yeah.
years ago. Those were, transformative books for me. And there is something about being in the moment of now. Gurus and, teachers have been stressing it and talking about it for thousands of, hundreds of years.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a new
Meditation.
idea.
Yeah.
But what the understanding I just recently had, and maybe it just took me much longer than everybody else to get there, is that the energy and the electricity that you can access if you are in the moment now, like I'm getting jacked up even thinking about it, even talking about it, because
I can see
like
it.
it always it brings me into
You're
the
standing
moment
straighter
now.
in your chair.
Yeah. Like even like talking about it gets me, like it catapults me into the moment.
Yeah.
It's limitless. It's a limitless resource.
Yeah.
Because I've always struggled with, I wish I had more energy.
Right.
I wish I had more energy to do more things that I want to do. Like, I'm tired of being tired and blah, 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 blah. But if I can be in the moment now, I can access this like fucking direct line. It's like a mainlining the juice of the universe, right? But here's the danger with that. And we can see this play out in so many ways. Everything is more intense in the moment now.
Right.
Especially when we're not even aware of the extra energy that now has. When we just kind of like ignore it, we don't realize the impact it has on our lives. How many times have we looked back on something we've written 10 years ago or 20 years ago in a diary or in a notebook and been like, wow, I was like overreacting.
Yeah.
Like, I'll never love again, blah, 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 or something like that. And it's like, wow, you laugh at yourself, how ridiculous you sound.
Yeah. It's almost like, who is that person? I don't know that person.
Exactly. Yeah. And you don't, I don't think. I mean, like that person is a stranger because so much changes from day to day inside of us. But like, that's a good example because in that moment that we wrote those things or we were feeling those intense emotions about whatever it was, something happening in society, something happening in our personal life, it was that intense. And the future, which is currently the present for us as we look back on that as the past, we're like, wow, that's like an overreaction.
Yeah.
But that's because that the past and the future don't have the same juice, the energy, the electricity that now has. And we can look back, and I think we will look back in 10 years at this specific period in time, right, that we're experiencing right now, especially in the United States. And we will look at it as a very profound moment in history.
Oh, it's going to be studied like crazy.
It is. And I think it's already being studied because we're like at that point of like human history where we're like currently studying what's happening to us now.
Yeah.
Right?
What happened last hour today?
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm not trying to discount the profundity or whatever we want to call it of all the different things layered on top of each other that are happening right now.
Yeah.
Because it's truly a real blessing to be alive in this time. even though it seems bonkers
It's a
and
reset.
crazy and
Yeah.
difficult
It's a
for
reset for
everybody.
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, and but we're gonna look back on this in 10 years and be like, wow, I'm glad I was one of the people that was able to go through this and experience and be a part of this moment.
Yeah.
But we will still look back on many aspects of it and laugh
Right.
at how ridiculous we were and how like, wow, we overreacted on this, on these things, blah, blah, blah. But right now it's so intense because it's right now.
Totally. I wonder if people will be or sorry, I feel bad about the people who died during COVID because they won't know how the movie ends in a way. It's like, oh, it's like,
I think but here's the thing from where I'm sitting, they already know how the movie ends.
yeah.
Right.
Oh, the big movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, they've got that. I mean, depending on your belief system or what you're willing to, entertain as
Yeah.
ideas of possibilities, I think those people already have immediate access
Yeah.
to, I don't know, we can call it circular knowledge, knowledge of past, present, and future. Like they just have totality of knowledge now, right? And because, if time is not linear,
Yeah.
like we've been discovering and trying to figure out, those people already know how the movie ends. They know how the sequel ends. They know
Right.
how the fourth movie in this series ends when we're traveling through space and hopefully time, in the 500 years from now. But so yeah, I think they've got
500.
yeah, I think we're about 500 years away from that. Well, I know I feel safe in saying that in 500 years
Yeah.
that'll be a thing that just we do,
Like
right?
we disconnect from things being linear in terms of time.
I think so because I think we're already disconnecting from linear time.
Do you like through computers and like uploading our consciousness, or like just because we're gonna make new discoveries in quantum physics or something like that?
Well, I think it's a lot of different pieces of the same puzzle.
Yeah.
And I don't think quantum physics is the answer to everything. There are scientists who are, I guess they're called physicalists,
Mm-hmm.
who are the ones who believe that physics and science will give the answer to everything. And if
Right.
science cannot answer it or define it, then it's not real.
Yeah.
And there are many scientists who are like, no, that's not true. It's built into mathematics. It's built into, physics. There's that unknowable sliver that's built into it, which is maddening for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the way it is. And I like to think that's where the paranormal world lives. And that's
Yeah.
where I spend a lot of my time. But
Well, there's
I
that
do think,
clock, like when Einstein did that experiment where it's like they put a clock on a plane that went like supersonic speed and it came back around and the clocks were different to like basically prove that time can react differently. It's not 100% like linear in one space, if that makes sense.
yeah, and it's affected by now.
There's like a
I just want
time
people,
bend,
anybody listening
basically.
to this, I want them to know in no way am I an expert. And I just read this book. I just finished this book like 2 weeks ago. But so a lot of this stuff is fresh in my mind
Yeah.
to some degree. But yeah, it's like reference frames.
Yeah.
What is your reference frame? Because if you're traveling towards a black hole and the amount of gravity, the way that it affects the difference time, and if anybody's seen the movie Interstellar,
Yeah.
you kind of get a
You get a
glimpse,
little bit.
kind of what people are theorizing. But to you, it feels like you're gone a year.
Mm-hmm.
You still experience time in the same way,
Yeah.
even though people on Earth experience that same amount of time as 7 years, but their time doesn't speed up. You know how that's the weird thing about what's been happening during COVID
Mm-hmm.
is when it first happened, there was a major shift in the experience of time for a lot of people I knew. I was
Mm-hmm.
just picking this up by the way people were talking, and I know I definitely experienced it. The older I get, the more and more I'm like, time just keeps going faster and faster. Time just keeps going, speeding up. It feels like I can't believe it's August already, or I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
believe it's 2020 already. Everybody was always saying that.
Right.
And, scientists will argue, to some degree that like the ever expanding universe, that is happening is maybe speeding up our perception of time. Right. And the moment of now, according to Richard Muller, theorizes that the moment of now is on the edge of space-time that is expanding as the universe gets bigger. That's where now is. We are on the edge of the universe as it expands. Like that's fucking cool, right? But even though I don't know what it means, it's awesome. So it sounds rad.
Yeah, it does
So,
sound good.
but once quarantine and lockdown started happening, time slowed down. I don't
Way
know if
down.
you
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Isn't that
And
interesting
then it
how
sped
our
up.
perception of time yeah, and then it sped up recently,
Yeah,
didn't it?
yeah,
And it was in like the last few weeks, last couple of weeks that it sped up again.
yeah.
And because we adjusted to it.
Right.
We adjusted to this new like feeling of time and like our life slowed down. So many of our lives slowed down. And it's like that idea that, you know, someone traveling to the black hole can be gone for 7 years, even though they in their reference frame it's like, no, I woke up for 365 days, it was a year,
Yeah.
right? So like even if time does speed up, even if time does truly slow down depending on our reference frame, we still experience it as just the normal time, right? So like our normal, even though we like think that, oh, time sped up, where did the time go?
Yeah.
But during those specific days leading up to that, we weren't like, oh my God, like seconds are moving fast. Like we can't measure a second moving
Yeah, yeah.
faster, right? So we still experience it the same way, even if we were that person traveling to the
Mhm.
black hole and we were gone for 7 years, we'd be like, what are you talking about? I was gone for a year. This is crazy.
Yeah. Well,
You know, like
measuring time is a lot for work. Like they created the 8-hour workday, so they had to measure people's time for payment and for productivity. But before, a lot of like keeping track of time, especially like in the earlier cultures, it was just like they didn't understand that concept. Like, why do you need to know the exact time? Like, it's what you feel, and you
this
look at the
is my,
sun.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is my great fear. Okay. And this is another one of these things I've tried to do a bit about, and I just haven't figured it out yet. But our great accomplishment with our elevated consciousness and our sapience,
Hmm.
as opposed to other animals, like
Yeah.
because other animals are sentient, but humans, we consider ourselves to be sapient, right? Where we have this like problem solving abstract thought process that like a squirrel's not going to sit there and be like, I think, therefore I am, right?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Squirrels,
that's like,
man.
yeah, squirrels. That's where like the sapience
Yeah.
comes in,
Yeah.
right? And I'm probably bastardizing that whole concept, but I think people get the point is what if our greatest achievement as these animals with sapiens is just like the measurement of time. We're so obsessed with the measurement of time, right?
Yeah.
Like I really think that I used to wear a watch. I don't wear a watch anymore because I feel like it's a prison bracelet.
Oh.
We're like in a building surround. We're like we have bars on our windows that are called calendars, right? We put
Yeah.
ourselves in this like prison of time, and it's like, oh man, what if that's like our greatest accomplishment? Like now that we're so conscious
Hmm.
of like everything, now we just imagine dogs were gifted sapience or this like elevated consciousness.
Yeah.
And you walk into a room to see the first dog
Yeah.
that has sapience. And it's just sitting there staring at a watch, counting like the measurement of time. Like, hey, dog, what's up? You can like think in all different ways. What are you up
Yeah.
to? It's 4:17 and 37 seconds and 38 seconds. I'm traveling through time. I'm
Yeah.
headed towards my inevitable death. When was I born? 4 hours and 18 minutes ago and 16 seconds,
Yeah.
17 seconds. And they're just we're
Yeah. Oh, I've
obsessed.
wasted so much time looking at time. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like this is what we're doing with our, with
But
our
how
quote
stressed do you
unquote
get
elevated.
as a comedian when you don't know how many minutes you're gonna do?
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's like I need to know what's my time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like in some way, like that's the beautiful. I mean, there's so many beautiful things. I mean, obviously, as a comedian, I believe that stand-up comedy has the most beautiful things in it, as opposed to everything else.
Yeah.
But I mean, because I think that's probably a way to measure the
Well,
things we enjoy in life.
we
But
measure all things in show business in time. What are you doing? Oh, it's a 22-minute sitcom. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, it's a 90-minute script. Like everything is time.
what's your
How
call time?
what's your call time? How long was your set? The 30 minutes. Oh, I'm getting an hour. Oh, the Netflix
Yeah,
gave me a 15. Like everything is all of
and one of
our
the
content is based in minutes.
and one of the fundamental things about comedy is how's your timing.
Yeah.
And it's like you have to have good timing.
Yeah.
And
But that's why people
I mean,
like podcasts, because it's like devoid of time in a way. There's like you're not monitoring the clock. A podcast could be 50 minutes, 2 hours. Like you're just kind of present.
yeah, I mean, it could even be 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's very popular podcasts that are 20 minutes long. Time is, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's unavoidable. to be obsessed with it. I mean, there maybe I don't know what the big break free from it would be,
Yeah.
other than I don't want to go on like an anti-capitalism rant. I mean, because to me, like so much of this ties into just like the structure, the fundamental structures of the way our society operates, right? And because like you said, it's about productivity, and measuring people's productivity is what now time has been used for. But some of the most beautiful things you can go see are like these ancient sundials, right?
Yeah.
Where our ancient ancestors were using the stars to measure time in a way that is so advanced, that it's mind-boggling to understand how they even understood like procession of the stars, even though
Mm.
it's like 20,000 years or whatever crazy thing it is. They had this shit figured out.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this is amazing. And they would use it for survival, for like crops and seasons, and to
Yeah.
know when they needed to move or go to a different area of land. And so
Well,
like,
I
it's
read
like,
that
it's
like
a valuable tool.
yeah, I read an amateur astronomist basically discovered Pluto. He was just like a farmer and he just kept watching this one star move. He's like, I don't think that's a star. And he discovered like a planet.
That happens all the time. There was these two, I think they're two Russian teenagers. They just in like the last month discovered a comet.
Yeah.
And they're in like high school. It was for like a high school project. These two gals, they just discovered a comet.
Wow.
And yeah, it's really, I mean, so that I don't think that's ever going to stop happening,
Yeah.
because of obviously the advancements in telescope technology, and the
Yeah.
further we can see out into space. It blows my mind,
It
man,
blows my
to
mind
think
that
about that.
like all of our technological advances are based on the computer. And the computer is basically like a fancy on off switch. It works in binary, like zeros and ones. And so it's like a little power lever going on off, like quadrillion amount of times. On, off, on, off, on, off, on, off,
Which
on, off,
makes no sense to me at
on, off,
all.
on, off, on, off, on, off. And it's like, that's how we discovered everything. A little switch that goes 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1 all day completely changed the world. Because I like actually a lot of things mechanical are like so fun, like a car with no uh, computers in it, or like things like, because we used to solve problems mechanically, like being a mechanical engineer, like planes fly mechanically. And then at some point, all of our technology became inside the box, and we kind of discover new ways to create faster computers that take the place of mechanics, if that makes
You
sense.
can you can see that play out in everything.
Yeah.
Like you can see it play out on stand-up comedy. The way you used to do stand-up comedy was you put a pen or a pencil or
Yeah.
whatever you used to write to a notebook, and very mechanical way, right?
Yeah.
Even though, and then you would use that pen and that pencil to dump these abstract thoughts, ideas, emotions, concepts, musings onto the physical plane,
Yeah.
onto the paper. And then you would take that and you'd walk yourself up on stage at an open mic night,
Yep.
and you would try these jokes out.
Yeah.
And everything was mechanical in that way. And there's many comedians long for those days. But now if you look at it, then the advent of Twitter became, oh, you got to try this new thing out, right? And social media and Instagram and all this other stuff. And then it became like, oh, this is interesting, you should try this out. You have to have
Yeah.
a Twitter, or you have to have a thing. And we all collectively agree, right? There's no
Mm-hmm.
rules. There's no rules to stand-up comedy.
No.
It's just all the things that if enough of us agree that this probably is a rule, then it's a rule, right? Like,
Yeah.
or the unwritten rules of stand-up comedy, which I love anybody who says, I don't abide by any of these rules
Yeah.
that everyone thinks there are about how stand-up should
Yeah.
be. Like, there's something beautiful about that. And I'm not talking about hate speech.
Yeah.
That's different. That's not stand-up comedy. That's just someone who's using that. Well, yeah, it's like that's just a hateful, or someone who's being hateful, finding a platform or an outlet for their hatred
Right.
that is more accessible or less regulated, right? That's not stand-up comedy. That's someone taking advantage of the beautiful art form that is stand-up comedy to try to spew their hatred.
Well, it's like Tarantino. Like Tarantino, basically, they just be like, "Oh, you have to write a screenplay this way, 3 acts like this," and he goes, "Well, I'm going to do it this way," and they're like, "Oh, this works too," You know, if
Exactly.
the art can push the boundaries of whatever the rules are. And I think in comedy it seems like there's always like the blueprints. Like in the 90s it was like you come and like you do well, then you get a sitcom and that's how you make it. And then it changes and now it feels like okay, well, it's there's two blueprints for like the new generation, which is like I can be like Trevor Wallace and do like sketches, which really like gets your visibility out there. You can do like the podcast, YouTube clip route, like Andrew Schultz, and like those are like the two models that everyone holds up. Like, look at these guys, they're doing it. But there's going to be a third one that we're not paying attention to right now that just comes out of the blue and be like, oh, that's the new model. But it's all still based around jokes and being funny. It's just the
Neither of those
technology
models
changed.
existed when I started.
Right. Well,
And
they didn't
that's,
exist a few years ago.
yeah, exactly. And this is what I struggle with. And when I started 18 years ago, a little over 18 years ago as an open micer, I knew what the model was for me that I wanted. And I mean, it all depends too on like, what do you want as a person?
Right.
And what is going to bring you the most joy? What do you truly want? And I think most comedians make a decision very early on. I either want to be the best I can be as a stand-up comic, or I want to be the most successful I can be in stand-up comedy, right? And I'm not here to say one's better than the other. Just because I, prefer one to the other doesn't mean one's better than the other. And so for me, it was like, I want to be the best stand-up comic that I can potentially ever become. And if that's not good enough to be super successful, hey, that's just life, right? That's not my journey, as they say.
Right. Well,
And
one's internal and one's external, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah. And so the model for me was, okay, I need to just write as much as possible. I need to perform as much as possible because for me, so much of performing is my writing process.
Right.
That I can't do one without the other. And so I'm doing that. Okay, then I'll start getting MC work at this club in the Midwest in Dayton, Ohio, and then I'll start getting guest spots at other clubs within like a 6 to 10 hour drive, and then I'll get MC work there, and then slowly but surely I'll start getting feature spots. Split weeks on Thursday or Sunday.
Right.
When the big headliner comes in and only does Friday and Saturday, then I'll MC the weekend, but that'll get bumped up to feature act on Thursday and Sunday when the feature act gets bumped up to headliner, right? And then I'll slowly but surely I'll start headlining C clubs.
Yeah.
And I'll move my way up to B clubs, and then after doing one-nighters, and then I'll be a headliner, and I'll be in all these clubs. I'll get into the chains, right? I'll be a road comic. I mean, that's what I wanted to be. I just wanted to be like, I want to just travel the country, the world, telling jokes for people in person in nightclubs where people were allowed to have alcohol and at the time smoke cigarettes inside. Right. And I was like, that's what I want to be. I want to be a nightclub guy, right?
Yeah.
And so I dedicated all my resources to making this dream happen, and everything filtered through that. Like I graduate college, I take a job waiting tables for over 10 years because I can defer my college loans until I hit that lottery ticket of a career. I need flexibility. I need a job I can quit at a moment's notice and won't feel bad about it. And that's the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
There's so much turnover in that industry, and they get it, right? So that's what I did. And then the plan started unfolding exactly the way I was hoping it would, even though I had no idea how it would, right? Or like it always feels like there's some magic key, like Zelda in the forest. You're like, how do I find this magic key to be a professional stand-up comic? Like how does it happen? Like there's no playbook, right? And so then fast forward to about 8 years ago, I'm a full-time comic on the road, making my living, doing a lot of clubs at the time. And I got a good thing going. This isn't even 10 years ago. I got a really good thing going. And then social media really starts to take off.
Yeah.
Right. Around 12 years ago. And then things start to really change. But my goal hasn't changed. Right. Sure, I want the TV spots and I want that stuff, but only so more people will come see me live.
Right.
Right. I never and when I was very young, I was like, I want to be Michael Keaton, because I don't think a lot of people know.
Yeah, he was a stand-up.
that he started in stand-up.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, he had the perfect career. But then I got a little bit older and I realized he didn't have the perfect career for me to emulate because he stopped doing stand-up like as
Right.
soon as he got into the acting game.
Right.
He was done with stand-up. I'd love to see Michael Keaton do a comeback, by the way. Michael, I know you're listening. I'd love,
Obviously listening.
go Paul Reiser on that ass.
Yeah.
Come back to the
I
game. You
saw
know what I
Paul
mean?
Reiser's comeback at the Improv when they walked him on. I was like, oh my God, here he is.
That's an amazing moment to be there. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I loved Mad About You. That pilot, by the way, is so dark, and like real that if people haven't watched that pilot of Mad About You, you can go back and you can see like, there was like realness in sitcoms.
Yeah.
People like to shit on on sitcoms from like that are older, but like go back and watch some of them and you'll see that like, there's some real good, like dark,
Yeah.
serious shit being tackled in comedies.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, and so the next thing you know, podcasts happen, right? And I don't know who first said it, but I love it and it's perfect. Podcasts, when stand-up comedians gave themselves day jobs.
Yeah. That's
It's like,
perfect. Yeah.
what are we doing? Because when I was, I got to a certain age, I was like, stand-up comedy is perfect for me because I love staying up late. I want to sleep in
Mm-hmm.
and I can just wake up, write jokes, go tell jokes.
Yeah.
That's my life.
It's a good
Hell
life.
yeah. Right. But now it's like, now I've got 2 podcasts that I do, 3 episodes a week. I'm like,
oh my God.
like, what am I doing? Like we literally gave ourselves day jobs
Yeah.
by doing podcasting. But getting back to the original point, like the model was you just work your ass off and get on stage as much as possible and try to build out your circle, and your circle widens eventually till you start getting those TV spots, and maybe you do some movies or TV or whatever, sitcoms or whatever else, and now you can travel the world doing theaters, right?
Right.
And now you can just be a stand-up comedian until the day you die. That's the plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Until
And
COVID
social
comes.
media wasn't,
Yeah.
yeah, until COVID comes. And, and social media didn't even, I mean, MySpace was around very early on,
Yeah.
but,
well, you had Dane Cook be like the first guy to really be like, wait,
there was the
this is
rankings.
important.
It was comedian rankings on MySpace.
Yeah. Comedian rankings.
There was the top 500.
Yeah.
And if you got into the top 500, that you actually could use that as a bargaining chip. It's wild to think about.
Yeah.
But but then someone like me is like, you know what? Vine, when Vine first came out, I loved Vine. I could get behind Vine. I like enjoyed using it.
Yeah.
But like Snapchat, I was like, whatever. Twitter, I was like part of weird Twitter. I guess people would tell me like, oh, you're on like late night weird Twitter. And I was like, okay, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And then, so they're like, you're not tweeting at the right times. And I'm like, see, that's what I don't give a shit about, and like, so when it comes to like
the all-encompassing algorithm that changes our lives by the time we tweet.
Like, and it's a stubborn part of me maybe that has prevented me from certain things, possibly, but it's not something I lose any sleep about, because I wasn't a little kid thinking to myself, someday when I grow up, I'm going to know how to dominate an algorithm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
but the new generation that's their number one goal.
That's their,
and they talk about it like, oh, he knows the algorithm so well. You're like, okay. Yeah,
it's like, well, good job. Well done. It's like, that's
meanwhile, Google's just like, yeah, right, you do.
Yeah. Oh, they all think they know the algorithm. We'll just change it tomorrow. Yeah. I don't even know if you can do that. I don't know what that means. But then, flash forward to a couple years ago, I realized, I'm like, you know what? I have to change my ways of thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the whole adapt or die stuff, that idea. And as altruistic as I think stand-up comedy can be, and the big breakthrough for me was also, I don't know how many years ago it was. It was probably at least 7 or 8 years ago, where I realized I get to define success. Right? I bought into, for years, the definition of success that everyone else constructed. And I wasn't successful unless I hit these benchmarks, or if I checked the boxes that everybody said, well, this is when you know you're successful.
Mm-hmm.
When you've done this or done this, you have a Conan spot or the
Yeah,
Tonight Show
yeah.
before that, or, you know, you have to have this and this and this and this. And that's when you're a good stand-up comic. And it's
Right.
like, what? I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
anybody in stand-up comedy knows that's not true. Um, and, you know, because you know good when you see it or
Mm-hmm.
when you hear it, right? And it's not a contest about like who's good and who's not, you know. I mean, some comics do like to sit around and talk about who sucks, but like, you
Yeah.
know, that's not really my game. But it's because that's the comparison game. And the comparison game to me is a direct result of everyone buying into the system, the only system that can define what success for you and your career is
Mm-hmm.
and what your passion is. Because I think stand-up comedy is so much more than just a career for most of us.
Yeah, it
It's
turns
our
into a
life.
lifestyle.
It's a
Yeah.
lifestyle. And are you going to live your life by other people's definition of what should make you happy?
Yeah.
That's when I realized that it was like a real watershed moment for me. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I've been defining my success by other people's standards instead of like really self reflecting, truly being honest with myself. What do I really love and what will
Mm-hmm.
make me happy? And what do I want
Right.
as a performer, as an artist? And as much, you know,
Well,
the
that's the good
greatest,
thing about
yeah,
this computer revolution is that you can be the most of yourself now and disregard as much as you want those old tropes of success because they're just little stamps of approval when we are all trying to fit through the same industry funnel, which is like a really small little spout. Like, oh, two or three people get in this year to this, two or three people get in the year to that. And now it's like, well, there is actually unlimited consumption for you if you build it and show people who you are and create your own fan base.
yeah. And for some perspective, for some people listening, it's like there was a time. Now, this is me summarizing and exaggerating for effect, but barely at all. There was a long period of time where stand up comedy on television was controlled by four white guys. Four white guys decided who got to perform on television. Now we're talking the bookers of all the, you know, major shows, right? And those bookers just move from one show to the other for the last 30 years, right? They've just moved around and bounced around to different shows. More shows would pop up. Those bookers would just go to a different show. That was for a long time. That was the case. So you have thousands of artists, performers wondering, am I not good enough?
Yeah. Well, they were kingmakers. It was
Because
like you
yeah,
needed their
and it's
stamp.
like, no,
Yeah.
you're not. It's not that you're not good enough. It's just that four white dudes didn't want to put you on TV, and now your whole life's work isn't worthy of being appreciated. Like that's how fucked up it all was. So right, and that's why I love what you're talking about, which is what has happened now, and like you can be yourself, and you know what? If your true self and what you really want to do finds that big audience, that's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
right? And there's
There's instant
like
feedback too. It's like if
yeah,
you put something out, it's not getting reaction. You're like, oh, maybe I'm not giving enough of myself. Maybe I need to get better. Like there's so much more instant feedback that's like you can get from like the metrics, so to speak, of putting stuff out.
and it also can get buried.
Yeah, it can
So
get buried.
you have to be
Yeah.
careful too. You
Yeah,
have to be
yeah.
careful, but
That's
like
true.
nobody likes my stuff, and it's like nobody saw it.
Yeah.
Which is something you also have to be careful about when it comes to
Right.
your self worth, right? But I mean, we can't take our self worth from this stuff. You know,
That's true.
our self worth has to be, and it's hard.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, it's not easy work to do that. But
Look how many
yeah,
great
so
specials like that came out that were just direct to YouTube of like amazing comedians this year. And they were like, the industry or whatever didn't have the slots open for them and they just put it out themselves and it gets millions of views. I mean, what's better than that?
exactly, finding your audience and making people laugh and bringing joy to them, and like in I love the idea of like being true to being who you really are. And
Yeah.
I've been doing a paranormal podcast for about 6.5 years. And because I've always been very fascinated with that stuff, I've always loved it. And then I started doing this podcast where I interview people, and then I start doing paranormal investigations, and I start going on like, you know, journeys into the woods for, you know, 5 days, 5 nights to like look for Bigfoot and all this other kind of stuff, right? But like all my personal passions which I used to think were a little too fringy, a little too weird.
Yeah.
My stand-up comedy, I guess, I can remember even going back to the early days. People always thought I was a little bit weird, right? But and I was never like the guy that was like, oh, he's going to be hosting the Tonight Show in 20 years. Everybody is like, he can make your grandmother, he can make your granddaughter. Like, I was never shooting for that. When I was a kid, I was like, I want to grow up and I want to make adults laugh.
Yeah.
Because I remember being a little kid and watching like my dad's buddies laugh when they were playing poker, drinking and smoking in the basement. I was like, if I can make these dudes laugh when I'm older, that's what I want to do with my life.
That's your genesis of wanting to please people in nightclubs. Your dad
Yes,
downstairs
exactly.
smoking and drinking.
Yeah, getting drunk, listening to Les Mis soundtrack on vinyl in the basement. So that's what I was like looking for. So people are like, oh, you should do more corporate gigs. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about doing that.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, the paycheck is huge on corporate gigs if you get into that world, but I've never been drawn to being a super clean comic. That's just not and I've tried before I've tried to get recordings for like satellite radio and things like that to make more money and things like that. But you can just tell I'm not really into it.
But you don't come across as like a super dirty comic either. You're kind of like in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, I try not to be in the bedroom, as they say. I try not to spend too much time in the bedroom or the bathroom. And I never really get graphic about sex.
Yeah.
But I just use adult language to discuss the things I'm interested in.
Right.
Like I drop F-bombs or whatever, but it's just the way I talk. But, and I didn't have friends until I cussed, which is like a real thing about my life when I was a kid. Like I was kind of a loner.
Yeah.
And then a new kid moved to my school. I cornered him on recess and asked him if he wanted to cuss with me. And because this was a Catholic school playground, right? So there's nuns out there. And so we started cussing and just running around, and we've been friends ever since. So like,
is it Dave Waite?
No, it's not Dave Waite. I didn't know Dave Waite until stand-up comedy. We met when we were coming up together.
Yeah.
But this kid was named Mark, and we met in like 6th grade. But but that was fun. So like there's a special place in my heart for bad words, because it helped me like develop friends for the first time on my own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, when you meet someone with a different language, the first thing they teach you is like the 3 bad words in their language.
Yeah. It's a great bonding mechanism. And it's just so fun and beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, I think like that's the cool thing though about like stand-up comedy nowadays. Like, I still believe that there are no rules about how you can be a stand-up comic. Emo Phillips told me years ago, I was lucky enough to work with him one weekend and, get to know him a little bit and talk comedy. And he was talking about like 1976, right? When he was like in Chicago. And this is before Comedy Central and all this is before like cable TV had shaped what mainstream mass audiences believed stand-up comedy was supposed to be. Because I do run up against that in clubs sometimes, and I work more independent venues than clubs the last 4 or 5 years, because I've been told by club owners you don't have enough dick jokes in your act.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I had a club owner tell me, he's like, you're one of my top 5 favorite comics, but I just can't book you because you don't have enough dick jokes for my audience.
Wow.
Because that paranormal podcast, like I was talking about earlier, like, I really opened up the floodgates for the things I loved to be what I did in my act.
Yeah.
Right. I just really embraced who I was and the things I wanted to talk about. And that's like, it's not necessarily you're not going to get jokes about the differences between men and women.
Yeah.
In my act, you'll get the differences between space and time.
Yeah.
Maybe
but it's not,
like
I would say
as
an observer, it's not like so esoteric. It's very relatable and very, very, it's still very funny and good. And I don't think you necessarily need a background in the subjects you're talking about, which can be very deep, which also is a testament to the comedy behind it. Like, I saw you for the first time at Dynasty Typewriter opening for Mark Maron, and I was like, oh, this guy's great. And I loved the subjects you were talking about, and I didn't know much about them, but I still laughed, Well,
that's the goal, right? If you can, like, I'm just trying to make the things I really love and that I'm interested in and what I find funny about them. I'm just trying to translate that to everybody else. And I'd never want to be, it's so funny that you said esoteric, because when I was younger, I was opening for a comic, rest in peace, Ron Ramey, very funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
and I came off stage. I was emceeing, and I came off stage, and the feature was on stage, and we're in the green room, and Ron Ramey goes, and Ron Ramey was a very like larger than life personality, on and off stage. Big guy, very funny, but very like commanding, right?
Yeah.
He's like, you're esoteric, and I was like, thanks. And this is like before.
Yeah.
This is before I had any idea what the word meant. So I went home. That's one of those weird positions when someone like tells you are something,
Right.
and you have to go home and look it up in a dictionary
And
to know if
someone
they just
above you.
insulted you
Right. Yeah.
or complimented you.
Right.
So in the moment, you're just kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can't wait to figure out if you think I'm a piece of shit or if you think I'm great.
Right. Yeah.
So I went home, and the definition of esoteric was difficult to understand, meant for very few. And I was like, okay, that wasn't
That's
a compliment.
That's a very negative description of the
word.
Of the word.
Yeah, I
Webster's
agree.
negative dictionary.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but that's what I took away from it, right?
Yeah.
And so the rest of the weekend was interesting. It was like interesting for me. I was kind of like on eggshells around him a little bit. But yeah, like if you can make these things, if I can make any of this stuff, I mean, that's what we want to do. We just want to communicate with people. And like, you can't make somebody laugh if they have no idea what you're doing.
Right.
I mean, outside of like extreme physical comedy where there's like, what's happening? This is funny.
Yeah,
that's different.
Right.
But when you're using words, we have to try to be, relatable. Like it's, to some, I mean, like, or what are we doing? It's like Larry David on like, to the extreme, right? It's like, it's like, that's where that like the idea of anti-comedy comes from.
Right. One thing we usually talk about in the pod is like comedy goals, and it's such a weird year to be talking about it now that we're in a pandemic. But like, what are your goals coming out of this for the next year?
Honestly, I haven't even really thought about that. It's such a weird, like everybody says, such a weird time. Every comedian I know, with the exception of a very few who like traveled and went and did some weird shows somewhere.
Yeah.
Or like the outside shows that are happening now. But this is the longest period of time every comic I know has gone without performing a live show since the first time they were ever on stage.
Yeah, I got my first show tonight, and I'm freaking out.
Outside somewhere?
Outside, yeah. Social distance, all safe.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it'll be fun. I mean, the Zoom shows, we did one last night at like the Nowhere Comedy Club. I mean, it was fun. But my goals are pretty, they're not, I don't want to say set in stone, but my goals remain the same lately, regardless of now or the future. And that is to do the best job I can of becoming the funniest version of myself that I can find.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means because it's the future, right? Like my interests could totally change. Or major life things could happen.
Mm-hmm.
That totally changes my perspective on the material I want to tackle. But right now it's just trying to be the funniest person I can be to me, or the funniest version of myself, and hope that translates. Because that's the people a lot of times will say, oh, so when you found your voice, or I found my voice at this age.
Yeah.
But what I think people are really saying there is, I found myself able to be the closest or closer to the funny person I know I want to be.
Yeah.
Right. Or like what I think in my mind, and I have this thought like, oh my God, that's funny.
Yeah.
Right. Now, translating that to other people, that's like, it's alchemy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're taking magic from the ether.
Yeah.
And you're turning it into, I mean, I'll never get over the amazingness of the very rudimentary toolbox we have of spoken language. I mean, we got 26 letters in English, That is like a
Pretty amazing.
rudimentary.
Yeah.
That's a rudimentary. That's a very basic toolbox when it comes to expressing our deepest thoughts, emotions, feelings, fears that we experience as these creatures. That I believe in connected consciousness, and that's the beauty of a really big laugh,
Yeah.
a gut buster. When you have a gut buster, I think a gut buster is when you have articulated out loud to someone else exactly what they've thought,
Yeah.
but have never been able to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you can fucking do that, that's when you bust a gut.
Yeah.
That's when you get that, oh my God. And that's where like people will be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like I've been thinking that, I've been saying that for years. But when they say that, they haven't been saying it for years,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They've been saying it to themselves for years. So it sounds like they've been saying it for years, right?
Yeah. That's
Or
why
you're
two
like, oh my God.
comedians can come up with the same joke separately because like it's funny because other people can relate and think about it.
Exactly. And just like fire was discovered roughly at the same time in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Like, this person over here on the other side of the world didn't come over and steal fire. Like people weren't going like, that guy's a hack. We had
Yeah.
fire 2 weeks ago.
Right. I tweeted fire last week, so it's
Yeah,
timestamped.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that'll never stop. I'll never stop being amazed by just the idea of being able to even get a little bit of a laugh, right? Let alone a big one.
Yeah.
Because of the real magic that happens in that moment. And that's a live performance thing for me.
Yeah.
It's fun to do it like on Zoom shows while we have to and like that kind of thing. And even tweeting stuff out or whatever else. But there's something about being in a crowd of people and being able to perform in front of those people and we all laugh together. There's nothing that makes us all realize that we're the same than being in those moments.
Right.
And a joke I'll do on stage is like, I don't care what color a pussy is. If it queefs, it's funny. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's something we all can get behind. Like, I don't care what color you are. I don't care what God you believe in. A fart is funny,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Farts are funny. Yeah.
a baby pissing on their father's face when he opens up the diaper is funny. Like it doesn't matter what you believe. That is funny. And there's these things, this comedy, this laughter that unites us all. But being in that live setting, I think I might cry the first time I'm on stage inside a comedy club and get to perform again. I think I actually might be so overwhelmed with joy that I might actually cry.
Yeah, it's going to come back soon. I mean, I can't imagine it going past the end of this year, which will go by like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I do know that I'm going to be traveling in less than a week. I'm going to take a road trip in my car to go see my family in Ohio.
Nice.
And I know there's a parking lot show at a club in Cincinnati where I kind of started at Go Bananas Comedy Club. And Dave Waite's there now, I think.
Yeah, he's with
in that area.
Kreischer, right?
Or wait, is Bird on tour again?
Yeah, like Bert, Dave, and Steve Fury. I mean, that's what I see on Instagram at least.
Oh, okay. I haven't checked the phone. Yeah, I didn't know Dave was. No, you're thinking of Dave Williamson.
No, Dave Waite.
Oh, Dave's on tour. Okay, I didn't know. So like I'm probably gonna be doing some shows, and I might swing by Atlanta to see some friends potentially, or I'm thinking about buying a house next year.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
I don't have any money, but I'm going to next year.
Manifest it.
Yeah, I'm going to. I mean, I've been really manifesting my way out of credit card debt, which I had way too much of. I had almost $30,000 in credit card debt.
Oh my God.
At the beginning of the year, and like it's almost gone.
Oh, that's a huge accomplishment.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's like something that I really focused on, right?
Yeah.
It's like, trying to make the best out of a bad situation, what we've been going through.
Yeah.
And so I've been pooling all my and I realized this thing really is a great reset in the way that it made me realize how reckless I was with my spending.
Yeah. When money's coming in and you're focused on the future, sometimes it's, you don't realize that paying any type of like 10 or above interest, like you can't save or get ahead with that. There's no way.
Yeah. And not to mention I'm a diner guy because I'm a comic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I'm eating at diners 3 nights a week after shows, hanging out till 1:30 in the morning with comics, shooting the shit, so that adds up.
It does. Yeah.
So I'm just like spending all of this money without even thinking about it, because it's just like, this is just my life.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then after, 15 years, you're like, oh shit, I've got some debt that like I just thought I'd pay off with a lotto ticket one day. That,
Right, yeah. The Hollywood accounting where it's like, oh, it doesn't matter now. One day you'll have this big check, so just keep going.
exactly.
Yeah,
I love that phrase, the Hollywood accounting. Yeah. It's like, cause we all, I mean, and if you don't believe in yourself, who's going to, right?
right.
Um, but you know what? It's a lot easier to believe in yourself when you don't have a mountain of crippling debt, hanging by a rope that has a candle burning it on
Yeah,
the other side, and you're
yeah.
standing underneath it, like that old cartoon.
It's
So I
romantic
already
when it
feel like a
works
different
out.
man.
Like everyone loves the story. Like I had this story about Pharrell Williams when he first got his like first whatever 10,000 check for producing. He went and spent it all because he just knew he was going to be successful. And that sounds romantic, but there's also the guy who spends the 10,000 who doesn't get another check for 6 months. And then that
Or
affects
ever.
or ever, and then that affects his ability to stay in the business, so to speak. And he has to go get a
Yeah, you
job and
never
then
hear about that guy
no,
or that gal because they are no longer around.
and they don't tell
They're
that
somewhere else,
story.
and they don't tell that story, and
It's
no
like
one wants to hear that story.
you never hear a story about, oh, I bought a house and man, I lost money.
Yeah.
You only hear about the house flipper or like that guy or like I bought it,
Uh-huh.
it's doubled. You never hear or the stock market guy who bought it and bought high and sold low. He's not telling that story at a cocktail party.
Hey, sit down and let me tell you my woes. Like
Yeah.
that guy's in a dive bar somewhere, right? And people are like, don't sit next to Terry. He doesn't shut up about how he used to be a music producer,
Right,
right?
yeah. Yeah, he bought Yahoo in 2000.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you don't hear those stories, but I do think part of the important part of stand-up comedy and business, and Jackie Cation is great about this,
Yeah.
is stand-up comics need to talk about money.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to talk about debt, and I think it's important to talk about what we get paid at gigs. And there's so much secrecy around what we get paid. And as we all know, that's why the wage gap exists, because we've been told we shouldn't talk about money, and that makes it possible for unequal pay to exist. And stand-up comedy is such a weird, it's not like an office job at a company, right? It's not like Procter and Gamble or something. So there is differing wages on door deals, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But comics need to know what they're worth, and we need to talk about it. We need to be more transparent about that. And I had $27,000 in credit card debt. I've still got like 45,000 in college loans that I'm in deferment on. But and I've been successful as a comedian. Like, I would consider myself very successful. I've been making a living doing stand-up comedy for over a decade,
Mhm.
traveling the road without having to have a day job. I've got 4 albums out.
Yeah.
All this stuff, right? I've
Great
got 2
albums. Yeah.
podcasts. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need honesty about what it means to be a working comic.
Yeah.
And there's such a big gap between being a working comic and being, someone like where Bert Kreischer is nowadays.
Yeah.
Right? There's a big gap between that.
Yeah, yeah.
And also,
It's like
guess what?
sustenance a little bit and then everything. And so it's like
Yeah.
and
And
the internet and everything has compressed that curve. So it's like it's even more on off switch. It's like you just go one day to the next level and you do actually have a lot more income.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that you didn't work for it,
No.
most of the time. And so it is this really interesting thing where people will always be like, oh, how can I be a comic? And it's just like, well, you don't have to, but it's very helpful to be willing to be the starving artist for a long time.
Yeah.
And
Seinfeld had this great thing. He's like, I purposely took jobs that I hated because I knew if I took a job that I liked, it would detract from the comedy. So all his part-time jobs, he said, were just like he hated, like selling hats on the street or whatever they were.
Yeah, I mean, I was washing dishes with a college degree because that's having that soggy waistline every night when I got home was a reminder. Guess who doesn't have a soggy waistline at the end of the night? A comic.
Right.
And so, that was every dish I was scrubbing, I would be thinking, someday I'm not going to have to do this shit. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like a good motivator to like be productive and write and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important for people to understand, who want to do stand-up comedy, that it's there's a saying in the paranormal world, like nobody gets rich from Bigfoot, right? Like you see these people who
Oh,
are on TV and like finding Bigfoot and stuff like
yeah.
that, right? And people think they're just going to come in like, oh, I'm going to go into this and I'm going to make a Bigfoot show and I'll get on TV, and it's like, well, there's not very much money in that,
Yeah.
right? Like you have to have like 12 seasons. You have
Yeah.
to have 12 seasons of a Bigfoot show to buy a house in LA, because reality TV doesn't pay the same as television, as acting
Right.
does. Um, and it's the same way with like stand-up comedy. You just have to keep going, and like the new model has been, or one of the new models has been podcasting, like you said, or monetizing videos
Yeah.
and things like that. And especially when you can't tour or do
Yeah.
live shows, like luckily I was transitioning this year into because we were talking about, I was like, I have to change my mindset
Mhm.
because the model I grew up on and what I was raised on in comedy was you keep going back to cities and you build your audience, and people keep coming back to see you. But that's contingent on the club bringing you back,
Yeah.
every 9 to 10 months, right? And that means you have to be writing and
Mhm.
creating new material, but and still like doing the stuff that works, or going back to that city, every 9 to 10 months and building that audience. But the way everything fractured media has made, and like everything else has become so more specialized, that's no longer the model, right? And I was like living that model thinking it was just going to pay off,
Yeah.
and that's just not the way. I was like, fucking snap out of it, man.
Yeah. It's
That's not the way
dangerous.
yeah, it's like that's not going to work, because
Yeah.
it's the proof's in the pudding, and guess what, there's no fucking pudding
Yeah.
in this bowl right now. So
I'm always suspect when they tell you like, "Okay, well, don't worry about oh, your albums don't make money anymore. Don't worry because you have touring or because you have this." Because that'll also shift again like we just saw. So, people who are 20% other income, 80% touring really got hit hard in COVID.
yeah,
And
because you don't know how deep they're into other stuff, other financial commitments they've got.
yeah, I mean, that could be like basically that's your job. I mean, it's for everything touring comics, touring musicians. They were all said, okay, don't worry, you'll make your money on the road. And then that goes away.
Yeah, and it's like the summer has always been my chunk time,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of like touring comics and musicians, they have their chunk time where they do the big tour,
Yeah.
and that's where they make the chunk of their money for most of the year.
Right.
And so it's it's a weird spot to be in, and thank God they changed the unemployment laws to independent contractors, because without that, who knows what I would be doing.
Yeah, that was a big it's all are you still in California?
Yeah, I'm over in Glendale.
Okay, yeah. I mean, California, the way they flip-flop with these contractor laws and like it's crazy.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed that they pass another stimulus package here in the next 4 weeks for extended federal unemployment aid on top of the state, because and people are like, it's a disincentive to work. Well, guess what? This is disincentive to go work. These jobs don't exist that these
Yeah.
people are being disincentivized to go get. Like, what jobs are these people talking about? Oh, they're talking about minimum wage jobs that the people who harp on that have never had to work in their entire lives,
Well, it's
right?
like Bill
Because
Maher has that great bit. He's like half the country is, stuck at home ordering Uber Eats, and then the other half is delivering it.
yeah, it's exactly, that's right on.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that this is like hopefully a once in a lifetime situation that we're facing.
Yeah.
This isn't like the new normal, like $2,400 a month from the government for everybody, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not just the way life is going to be. And that's not what we want it to be anyway.
Well,
Those of us
there
who
was
have
not
been
a
on
lot.
employment.
Yeah, there's not a lot of like I don't know if truth is the right word, but like remember when they were like, "Oh, 2 weeks and we're gonna flatten the curve." Oh, just a month. Oh, it's 3 months, and now it's just a new normal. So like, masks work. Oh, they don't work. Oh, you should wear masks. And there was a little bit of like dishonesty in a way about how the information was rolled out. Like they said
Oh
like, "Oh,
yeah.
don't wear masks. You don't need them because we might run out." Well, like, oh, you could have just made our own masks. Like, I'd rather know the real truth than like being
Well,
told
it all starts at the
I can't
top.
handle it because we'll run out.
Yeah, and when you have because it all starts from the top, right? And when the top is unstable, the rest of the tower is wobbling. and it makes it difficult for any of us to feel like we have our balance when it comes to knowing the truth about this. But the good news is this: there is something we control, and that we control our own. To some degree, we can take control of our own thoughts.
Yeah.
We can take control of the moment of now, and we can try to tap into that electricity and like, okay, how can I use this this moment to achieve the things that I really want in life? Have they brought them into clearer focus, what I want to do with my career?
Yeah.
And do they mesh with the future I see for myself, these things that I've been doing, my actions from the past?
Right.
And like, we've been hit with such a heavy load of like all of this stuff at once, whether, it's COVID, it's social justice, Black Lives Matter. It's, all of this human
All at
rights.
once.
It's all of this,
Yeah.
all at once.
Yeah.
And it's important that we, allow ourselves to feel grateful that we've been given the opportunity to like painfully work through this shit.
Yeah.
Because guess what? It's better on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a good thing. Whatever happens, it is going to be better. That's actually a really nice way to
It's better on the other side once we get done with this shit, man.
Yeah.
Once we work through this shit, it's going to be better.
What other point in history do we know it's going to be better for sure? Very few.
Yeah. Yeah. Very few.
I like that positivity.
So, yeah, it's good to be in stand up even when we can't do it.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I'll let you know how it goes tonight. I feel like we have a really good conversational rapport, and this could go on for like a long time.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's just been fun. We'll have to, touch back in again at some point in the future if you want.
Yeah. Where do people find
maybe
you?
After all this.
Yeah.
People can find me at ryansingercomedy.com, or they can just find me on Instagram at rysing, RYSING. That's most of my social media handles are rysing.
Yeah, that's a good handle. I like it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I got in there early.
Yeah.
And, the .com of Instagram handles.
Yeah, 6-letter one. I like it.
Yeah. And so, they can find me there. My podcast is Me and Paranormal You. That's got over 500 episodes.
Nice.
I've got another podcast I've been doing for about a year and a half. That's really fun. It's called This Is Where the Magic Happens. It's me and my co-host, Angela Lovell, who's a psychic witch. And we talk about magic and the occult and paranormal stuff too. But mostly that one's about like magic, and that one's really wild. She's got a lot of crazy stories. So
yeah, that
one can be off the rails, and I'm
gonna check it out after this.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Follow Ryan Singh at Ryan Singh, RYSING. Listen to his pods. Thanks again for doing it. I really appreciate it, and I've had a lot of fun.
Well, Latif, this has been great, and have fun tonight. I'll text you and see how it went.
Awesome.
Later.
Thanks.
Cool.
Take care. Bye.
Good to see you.